different counties tonight, but it'll remain largely dry in the east with lowest temperatures 7 to 11 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
This is News Talk.
And you're very welcome along to Thursdays Off the Ball. It's Richie McCormick here with you until 10 o'clock, and a packed 3 hours on the way for you. We'll be looking back to the year the Dubs ended 12 years of hurt, 1995. Can you remember days when a Dublin footballing drought was such a thing? Yes, well, we'll be looking back in 95 and the day they ended that drought with Charlie Redmond and Tyrone's Shamie McCallan. That's coming up after 8 o'clock. We'll also be heading over to the US Open, John Vertime, on the battle between Fernando Verdasco and the Rules in the heat of Flushing Meadow. We'll be talking Spanish football with Andy West. That's coming up in the football show a little bit after 9. And we'll also be talking Thursday night football with John Giles. As ever, our text number is 53106 for 30 cents, and you can get us on Twitter at Off the Ball. Joined this evening by the stars Kieran Cunningham. Good evening, Kieran, and also Neil Tracy. Evening, Neil.
How are you doing, Richie?
You were probably about 3 when 1995 rolled around, Neil.
I was 5.
Get out.
5, yeah.
Go on.
I'm kind of useless to you in this conversation. I don't really have any memory.
I was slightly more than 5.
This is YouTube videos of Jason Sherlock and his fantastic haircut.
See, the worst
is
part,
about the extent of my knowledge of that.
The worst part about this is now is that I'm going to be grouped into the same age category as Kieran, which just isn't true at all.
He's older than me.
Well, you see, luckily for me, I'm at the age where I don't really have any, as a Limerick person, I don't really have the scars of 94 or 96 either.
You're like Keane. Was it Keane Lynch who didn't? Was like, oh, were you in the final in '96 as well? Apparently, he was saying to somebody. So yeah, like you're learning as you go.
Well, there's a famous story of Keane Lynch about '96 because you know his mother is Kieran Kerry's sister. That Kieran Kerry's famous point, to be clear, when they were reigning All Ireland champions, she was breastfeeding him, according to Keane, but threw him up in the air. The excitement. I think she managed to catch him on the way down.
Not to be advised.
No, especially not when you're breastfeeding.
Enda outside has just pointed out that he was -2 when 1995 rolled out. -2 months. All right, Grant. That's not as bad, but it's still disgusting. But yeah, memories of '95 and all that. It was a pretty famous day. Charlie Redmond. He was a big doubt coming into that game. We'll be speaking to him obviously later on after 8 o'clock about his particular influence on it. He was struggling with his groin coming into the match. He pulled it while just doing some routine training back in the Thursday, I think, before the final, and then was a major doubt all the way through the weekend, and was a last minute. He was saying he was wearing a tracksuit in the team photograph, and he ends up scoring a goal, of course, which had a massive bearing on the game, but he also ends up getting himself sent off, and this is the way he saw it while talking to Ger Canning after the game that day on September 17th, 1995.
Originally, it seemed like there was a free to you. Then there was the hot ball. Did that, in your mind, say to you, referee has changed his decision?
I thought the referee had changed his mind. I heard a conference or a conversation between the linesman and the referee, which the linesman spoke up for me and said that I didn't headbutt him, that I went into him, and I didn't headbutt Fergal Logan. I think Fergal Logan might back me up on this. The referee made a decision, and I can't change that.
You continued playing for about 3 minutes. What do you remember next?
Getting sent off.
That's the simplistic way. What happened? The referee came right across the field to identify you.
He came over to me and he says, "You shouldn't be here." And I says, "No, I failed a fitness test yesterday. Well, I shouldn't be here."
It's quite remarkable that we ended up in a situation in an All-Ireland final where a player was sent off and just went, no, I'll just go back and play.
Yeah,
it's grand.
But it's like I remember it vividly, and part of the reason was that can partly explain it. There were no yellow and red cards back then, because they were a more recent phenomenon. So,
can you believe such a time existed, Neil?
I know,
no yellow and red cards.
I do remember the first weekend they were introduced.
Yeah,
there was carnage at a Westmeath and Carlow game. It just stands out in my head.
Okay, but you can imagine, like, there's going to be no confusion of a red card that's held up.
Yeah, of course.
But at least, you know, I suppose Charlie can argue that there was, but this took off on a life of its own. It was absolutely bizarre because he mentioned Fergal Logan there, and the incident was he was alleged to have headbutted Fergal Logan, the Tyrone midfielder. But the following day on, I think it was Live Line or else phone in RT, but I think it was Live Line, and Joe Duffy was presenting it, and a guy rang up pretending to be Fergal Logan.
No.
And said it wasn't Charlie. No, Charlie did nothing wrong. Charlie, but a guy putting on a Tyrone, either from Tyrone or putting on a Tyrone accent, rang up pretending to be Fergal Logan, trying to clear Charlie, because everybody was hammering Charlie Redmond over this. Like, it was a big topic after the game. There was talk of the Tyrone secretary, who's still the secretary, Dominic McAfee, talked of lodging protest and appeal over it. And that night on the Sunday game, Colm O'Rourke said an appeal would be silly because Charlie didn't score in the 3 extra minutes he was in the pitch, which is kind of an odd logic. But
could have still had a bearing in it.
Yeah, it did. I think he might have touched the ball once, and if they'd scored at the end of that move, it would have been very controversial, given they won by a point at the end. So, but the Logan, the fake Fergal Logan, was bizarre. But it's actually, I honestly think that game in many ways has created the modern Dublin and Tyrone's, because like Jim Gavin was part of that setup, and so was Jason Sherlock, who's there now. Mick Deegan was there a few years, but all that JO mania that summer, like I think where Dublin are now, I think they thought that took over. It was too much. Like that was hype incarnate, which is the devil's work to Dubs.
He was the modern incarnate of just the superstar football.
Yeah, but like that summer changed everything. If you go through the GA, it was the first summer there were live games all through. Like it wasn't just All-Ireland semi-finals or finals or the few other.
Can you believe that, Neil? Live games all the way through.
Yeah. But it was also the first year of the Guinness hurling sponsorship, which was a major deal. It was a year Clare's hurling breakthrough. It was a heatwave summer. I think what happened with Jason Sherlock, like Jason ended up getting Kevin Moran as his agent, and that all led to the formation of the GPA, I think, and players to getting commercial endorsements. All that happened with Jason at the time, and the following year,
he was a marketable entity where there weren't many.
Yeah, absolutely. But the following year, Tyrone got back to the All-Ireland semi-final and they lost to Meath, if you remember.
Oh, I do.
And they were effectively bullied, and I think there was a feeling in Tyrone they were bullied in 95 and 96, and later on when they made the breakthrough under Mickey Hart, there was this steeliness or not an unspoken pledge that would never happen again.
Well, they were a fairly young side, and like even I was watching back the post-match stuff from 95 with Colin Work and Pat Spillane, fresh-faced as they were back then, even more youthful than you are, Neil. Yeah. And they were talking about how, like, even O'Rourke was kind of pessimistic about how they would make it out of Ulster. Like, you forget how, it's still a strong championship, let's not fool ourselves. But when you factor in that the previous 4 years have produced the All-Ireland champions from the Ulster Championship. Yeah,
because there's a very important point there that really nagged at Tyrone, because Down had won in 91, Donegal 92, Derry 93, Down again 94. Tyrone got the final then 95 and Tyrone lost. And there was a feeling in Ulster that Tyrone had let Ulster down because they were dominating the football landscape then, and they'd had 3 different counties winning, and the feeling was Tyrone would be number 4. So I think that really bugged at Tyrone. But the other thing, it was a remarkable time because that Tyrone team in 96 retained Ulster, and it was the first time anybody had retained Ulster in 21 years.
That's incredible, yeah.
You know, but Peter Canavan, like, it was a joke. There was all those jokes about going around at the time, like, what's the difference between the black taxi and Tyrone? Is that the black taxi is only allowed to carry 6 passengers wherever it is, but it was all supposed to be just, it was Peter, like, it was disrespectful to some of the other Tyrone players, but the perception was he carried that team. Yeah. And I remember going to see Tyrone play as a spectator a few times in the early 90s, like 92, 93, 94, before they made the breakthrough, long before he won his All-Ireland. And Canavan was unbelievable. You wouldn't believe the standard he was playing at. Like, actually, when he was kind of on the downward slide by the time he won his All-Ireland. Like, injuries and age had caught up with him, but he was still hugely effective. And his goal, he scored one of the great All-Ireland final goals in 2005.
It's amazing his longevity, but what struck me looking back on all of that today in preparation for speaking to the two lads was you kind of forget that Dublin All-Ireland win is just marooned in this sea of All-Irelands for literally everybody else.
Yeah.
And you kind of figured the 95, when I was listening to Jim Gavin in his post-match interview at the time, and Keith Barrows down at Croke Park with the lads tonight, they were saying that this is the culmination of 4 years hard work, etc. And it did seem like that they were at the end of a process. Yeah, it just seems surprising that it.
I wouldn't say it was a process. I think they fell over the line. Like 91, they had the 4 games with Meath. 92, they were shocked by Donegal.
Well, there was no opportunity for a side to lay, like, in the way that maybe a Mayo in the last couple of years played themselves into form throughout a championship. Yeah. There's no way you could do that. I mean, you had like 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, it was straight knockout, obviously. Yeah. So there was it was a very different world because of the straight knockout. But like Sherlock gave them that extra spark they needed in 95, and Brian Stein's coming back from Australia as well. But generally, like, if you can bear to sit through that entire game, it was an awful game. It was one of the worst All-Ireland finals ever played.
I sat through half an hour's highlights of it with Jim McGee on commentary earlier because he was doing it for Channel 4.
Yeah, but there was, there was this desperation for Dublin to get there, and they got there. Like I remember John O'Leary's speech afterwards as captain, and he's I think he's the only All-Ireland winning captain to quote Van Morrison in his speech.
That's good going.
Wouldn't it be great if it was like this?
Who's
all
actually
of the time?
keeping track of that, though?
me and Richard.
True, yeah. True.
We're here keeping the peace, making sure that people quote Van. So like the onus is on Stephen Cluxton and all to kind of.
Well, he's saving. He's going to reference V Dunphy if they win the 5 in a row. And play 6 minutes solo from Astral Weeks.
I don't know. Maybe if he references something from his band and street choir, I'd probably be the happier.
Okay.
But that's my liking of it. 52106 the text number tonight, and you can tweet us at Off the Ball. We'll kick off the news round, which is brought to you this evening with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products, and reunited, and it feels so good for Cristiano and Man U.
Yeah, his new Juventus side drawn up against Manchester United in Group H of the Champions League. Also in that group, Spanish side Valencia and Young Boys of Switzerland. But Ronaldo going back to Old Trafford is the story that's going to dominate.
Yeah,
like remember last time
up against his old manager Zinedine Zidane as well.
Respect.
While to go yet.
Respect, man. Respect.
But like it was such a big deal the last time round when United and Real Madrid drew each other in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, was it? I think 2012 or 13. And Ronaldo scored.
Muted celebration.
Remains to be seen. It's got a lovely late 90s vibe to it though, I think.
That group does actually. It actually looks like it's
particularly United Juventus.
It looks like it's more competitive than it'll probably end up being. I mean, United and Juventus clearly will end up the top two.
And as was pointed out several times in the last 10 minutes, I am young, and to me, Manchester United and Juventus just was the tie of the 90s.
Yeah.
And they play Barcelona. That is
the Champions League.
Do you think it's that cut and dried?
Yes.
Would Sevilla not be in a par? Yeah, but with Sevilla not being a par with Valencia, and they went out last season to Sevilla.
I depending on where Manchester United are by the time the last three games come around in the Champions League, let's say.
Yeah. But judging on where they are at the moment, I wouldn't back them. Like they clearly should improve over the next month or two, but. I wouldn't be backing them with any confidence at the moment.
Anyway,
stinker for Liverpool, really.
Liverpool and Spurs, very, very tough draws. So Liverpool, they're in Group C alongside Neymar's PSG, Italian giants Napoli and Red Star Belgrade, who qualified last night. Spurs are in Group B. They're going to be going to Barcelona, Inter Milan and Dutch champions PSV Eindhoven.
But I think Tottenham would be fine.
If you remember with Spurs last year, the group they got, they'd
Real Madrid the bid Real. I think Tottenham would be fine. I think Liverpool would still go through. Sarri isn't there anymore. Obviously, Ancelotti's now at Napoli. There's a lot of. You're talking about history. Ancelotti's a huge amount of history at Liverpool. 2 Champions League finals, then playing with Chelsea as well.
Red Star had to get 2 goals late last night.
Yeah, to go through the playoffs. But the one thing I would say about that group, it is a tough group for Liverpool, but it sets up because of the way Liverpool, PSG and Napoli play, it sets up some brilliant games because...
They'll have goals in that group, basically.
Yeah, they would, because if you watch Liverpool against... the team, when they play defensive teams, like even Brighton, they struggled. Like they got by 1-0 at the weekend. But I can't see Napoli play a certain way, and so do PSG, and they're going to go for it. So I think those could be really cracking. Of all the games in the group phase, they jump out at me, I think.
Neymar and Mbappe at Anfield's a bit of a mouth-watering prospect as well. Manchester City.
Yeah, they're going to be relatively pleased with what they got. They're in Group F alongside Lyon, German debutants Hoffenheim and Shakhtar Donetsk of Ukraine, who they also faced in last year's competition. They beat them at the Etihad last year, but lost over in Ukraine, but they had already qualified at that stage. So I don't think they were too upset about that. But of the other groups, in Group A, Atletico Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, Monaco and Club Brugge. Then Group D, this is the one to avoid really. Lokomotiv Moscow, Porto, Schalke and Galatasaray.
One for the purists.
Porto, I was looking back actually the last few years, they have been blessed with luck in the group stage. Last season they got Leipzig, Monaco and Besiktas. The season before that, Club Brugge, Leicester and Copenhagen.
Do you know what, right? When we end up watching...
They've basically been in the Europa League 3 years in a row.
Is the goal show still a thing this season on BT Sport? Because if it is, I guarantee that group will end up producing the most crack when you're watching it on Tuesday or Wednesday night. We actually, for those of you who don't have draw fatigue, the third round draw for the Carabao Cup has been made in the last few moments as well. The standout tie for that one sees Liverpool play host to Chelsea.
Ah, lovely.
Yes.
So Liverpool reserves against Chelsea reserves.
Still in all, though. It's a decent reserve side.
Okay.
Elsewhere, West Brom Palace, Arsenal at home to Brentford, Burton playing host to Burnley, Wycombe, Norwich, Oxford playing host to Manchester City. West Ham will face Kieran O'Hara and Macclesfield. Millwall, they'll play Fulham, another London derby there. Bournemouth v Blackburn, Preston, Middlesbrough, Wolves, Leicester, Tottenham, Watford, which is our live game this Sunday on Off the Ball. Blackpool, QPR, Everton, Southampton, Manchester United at home to Derby, and Nottingham Forest, who of course accounted for Newcastle last night, they will be at home to Stoke. So that's the third round draw for the Carabao Cup, Neil.
Yeah, well, moving on, England manager Gareth Southgate says Declan Rice has a difficult decision on his hands as he weighs up his international future.
Pope also poos in woods.
Rice has played 3 times for the Republic of Ireland in friendlies, has spoken to Southgate about the possibility of representing England, the country of his birth, but the England manager says Rice still remains an Irish player and that the decision has to lie with him.
Well, he's obviously, there's so many dual nationality players, and he's a good young player. He's got a really difficult decision because there's a lot of pressure on him, and I'm conscious he's a very young man and there's a lot of spotlight on him. As far as I'm concerned, he's with Ireland at the moment, and as much as we think he's a very good player, that decision has to lie with him.
A lot of qualifiers and caveats in that rather political statement from Southgate.
Yeah, but in fairness, what could he say?
Yeah,
he's not going to come out and say, "Come on, Declan."
No,
but it's the little at the moment.
You're English born and all this stuff.
Yeah, well,
think of Bobby Moore.
Yeah, and he does. It starts off by mentioning about it's a common issue at the moment. Like a lot of players have dual nationality. Like you look at Wilfried Zaha. I think England must be ruining, not persevering with him, because he'd been captain of friendly and he moved on to Ivory Coast.
Yeah,
he was heavily criticised as well when he declared for the Ivory Coast.
Yeah, but they hadn't picked him for a few years, so I thought,
why not?
Yeah, why not?
He thinks he's off the radar. The question for Rice is, and it's something that Dan touched on last night when he was in with us, it's not necessarily that he declares for England and suddenly he appears in the next squad. There's a many hooped process to jump through here, and then again there's also the issue that he might be 4th or 5th down the pecking order in terms of centre halves or midfielders that are going to be picked.
Well, he might at the moment, but he's only 19.
True.
And you look at, I was looking through their squad today, and there's a couple of guys there, and you go, in a couple of years' time.
He's talking about Eric Dyer's world beater.
Yeah.
Scored a winning penalty in the penalty shoot in the World Cup.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But this is the nature of modern sport at the moment. Like you go through the Irish Olympic sports, like Sunita Puspure, competed for Latvia. Now she's competed for Ireland the last 2 Olympics. Shane Ryan went to the US Olympic trials for London 2012 in swimming, and now he competed for Ireland swimming at the Leon Reid, and Alex Wright competed in athletics for Ireland. Both competed for England in the past. Kieran Behan competed for England in diving. Now he competes for Ireland, and it goes the other way. Like Saskia Tidey, sailor for Ireland, Rio Olympics. Now she's in the Tokyo GB team for 2020. Like you have people switching nationality. And I was even thinking about this the other day because I was listening to Kevin Caban and Keith Andrews' discussion earlier.
Yeah, we'll have more of that later, by the way.
Yeah, it was very interesting just about the nature of Irish identity, Kevin's Irish identity growing up in England. And I think maybe he's part of the last generation to have such a strong feeling. Because I was thinking, even when I lived in London during the 1990s, like all those areas like Harlesden, Kilburn, Cricklewood, Ealing, Hanwell, etc., they all had Irish social clubs and Irish nightclubs, etc. And you walk around there now, that's all gone. And like even something like the Sky deal, I think, is at an impact because people used to gather at those clubs to watch GA against the weekend. Now they can watch them at home. So that kind of collective feeling of identity and connection and togetherness and a bond towards Ireland, I think that's faded a little.
Without wanting to speak from Kev's folks and those of that generation, and maybe even Kev would have been the last of it, would have been the last generation that were probably persecuted for being Irish over as well, which would only have fostered more warm feelings.
Because he touched on that today when he was talking about that. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think the situation has changed. I think I would say Declan Rice has an attachment, but I don't think it's anything like Kevin Kilbane's attachment, because also, it's a further out connection, like a familial connection. Like Kevin's father's from Mayo, and like Kevin would have been in Mayo a lot growing up. Declan Rice is, is a grandparent, and his mother and all his mother's family are English. So I don't think that the bond is quite as strong. Yeah, it's a difficult one for him. We're kind of left in this vacuum until we actually hear from the man himself. We'll talk about it a little bit with John Giles a little bit as well after 7:30. But there's plenty of action tonight as well, Neil, and it's in the Europa League. Yeah, Celtic and Burnley both kick off their Europa League playoff second legs inside the next half an hour, 40 minutes. Burnley trail Olympiacos 3-1 ahead of their second leg at Turf Moor. That starts at 7:45. Kevin Long and Jeff Hendrick start for Burnley. Stephen Ward is on the bench. Celtic are level at 1-1 with Lithuanian side Sudova, but they do have an away goal. Moussa Dembele not involved in tonight's squad, with a potential move to Lyon on the cards. Earlier today, Rangers survived 2 red cards to book their place in the group stage. For the first time in 8 years, Stephen Gerrard's side drew 1-1 on the night with FC Ufa in Russia, advancing 2-1 on aggregate. Ovi Ijaria's early goal that got them over the line, while Rangers picked up 2 red cards during the match. First for Alfredo Morelos in the first half, and then John Flanagan being shown the line in the second half. Yeah, they were clinging on. I was watching the end of that game a little bit earlier on. Colm on Twitter is an exceptionally hopeful soul. Speaking of the Champions League draw, he says, lads, don't forget Liverpool whooped Napoli last month in a pre-season friendly at the Aviva as well. Liverpool should easily qualify. I forgot about that. The form book says so. Well, there you go. 51,000 turned up for that kick around, which is remarkable. I wonder what Dermot Keely has to say about it. James Horan, though, he's down at Croke Park for us tonight. We might actually get a couple of news lines from Croke Park tonight. Could be a bit busy for you later on, because James Horan's in there, Jim McGuinness. Celebrity death match between Jim and James. Whatever settles this for once and for all. Aidan O'Shea there as referee. He can decide who is the winner. Swerve. Aidan O'Shea picks up the chair. When they're wrestling mud on the floor. There's no need for the mud. All right, that's your own subconscious. Who's going to sit closer to tonight, I wonder? That was last night's stream. I hope we have a body language expert down there. We have to have a body, because it's going to be like, what way is James Horan sitting in relation to Jim McGuinness? Oh, look, yeah. And a late call from Geezer's in. Yeah. Anyway, Horan, what's he have to say about the Mayo gig? Well, this is a no approach from the Mayo County Board about returning as their manager. He's reportedly among the favourites to succeed Stephen Rochford. He stepped down earlier this week, citing a lack of County Board support to continue for a 4th year. Horan says his current focus is on coaching Westport, and that inter-county management is what he says not on his short-term radar. Right. Meanwhile, 2016 Footballer of the Year Lee Keegan says he's hoping the players are able to have a say in the recruitment process. Speaking to OTBAM this morning, Keegan says they were given a say in bringing in Rochford and would hope the same will apply here. The players are going to be working this manager throughout the next year, maybe 2 or 3 years. And that was something that worked well when Stephen was brought in, that there was a player voice, and they made it clear that they wanted Stephen in originally. And again, that worked brilliantly over the time we had Stephen. So I think it is important, because at the end of the day, it's the players that are going to be playing under him, and the players that are going to be trusting what I suppose he's going to bring to the setup, and what selectors and backroom he's going to bring out of him. So definitely, I think it's important, and it shouldn't be just put over players' heads. Like, I think it's important to connect with some of the leaders out there, particularly in our own group. So there's some really good voices that could be heard and have some good ideas, and maybe we can learn a bit from that, and maybe the County Board can take on a bit of that advice going forward now for the next 2 or 3 months. Player power, Kieran. In Mayo. I know this will really annoy some people that he said this, but I think he's right. I think it's 100% fair. Players should have an input, because they're not making the decision, but they should. They should have an input. A name should be run by them. What do you think of that? Yeah, and the reality is, players have a better knowledge of what's required in a top level intercounty setup than 99% of county board officials. That's been honest now. And that might be underplaying it even. Well, even when you mentioned the county board's longevity of some people, you see the likes of Frank Murphy down in Cork, you see, as you mentioned, they still have the same chief in charge of Tyrone that they did back in 90. Like, that's exceptional longevity, and probably too long in some instances. But it makes you wonder how in contact they are with the modern day player. Indeed, yeah, but it's going to be a very interesting appointment, because it's such a strange county. It just dominates, no matter what. 53106 at KC67 if you want to send your abuse from Mayo.
We're not taking any of that personally, by the way.
No, the Dubs hate me. The Mayo people love me.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Well, they've ruined that now. You're hated by all. You're Paddy Russell in the 95 final. Right, Neil will be back in throughout the course of the evening with more updates. I know the US Open is ongoing as well. We'll be talking about that with John Vertime a little bit later on. Also on the way, 7:30, football with John Giles. And we'll be talking 95, as I mentioned. Your memories of 95, keep them coming. 53106, Charlie Redmond and Shamie McCallan will be with us for that. But don't forget, we've got live commentary of Wales versus the Republic of Ireland in the brave new dawn of the UEFA Nations League next Thursday. Nathan will be joined by Gary Breen in Cardiff for that game. The night before, so that's Wednesday the 5th, we'll be previewing the game and debating all the issues on the international landscape. Wonder what that could be. With Kevin Kilban, he'll be at the Backpage pub in Phibsborough, Grand Gaff, and he'll be joined by Mark Lawrenson and Ronnie Whelan. So there's no doubt going to be some Liverpool chat at that as well. A very, very exclusive night. Only a crowd of 40 or so invited guests. This is like the Sex Pistols at the Leicester Free Trade Hall. If you want a chance to win a pair of tickets...
Don't let Mick Hucknall in this.
He was there.
Don't let him in this.
I got blocked by Mick Hucknall on Twitter. If you want a chance to win a pair of tickets, answer this very simple question. Who holds the goal scoring record for Wales? Who holds the goal scoring record for Wales? Text your answer and your name, of course, to 53106 for 30 cents. We'll announce the winner later on the show. And bear in mind, you have to be over 18 to enter. You can be part of this very exclusive night previewing Ireland-Wales with Kev, with Ronnie Whelan and with Mark Lawrenson. Off the Ball, live at the Backpage pub in Phibsborough next Wednesday, the 5th of September. And it's all in association with Bud Sports. Kieran, thanks very much for coming in.
No problem.
Best of luck with the lynch mob outside. Neil, as I mentioned, back in throughout the night. And we're talking to John Giles next.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.
Down to Business.
This Saturday on Down to Business, I'll put the cat amongst the parrots in our look at the business of pet shops. I'll speak to the corporate hippie John Grant about human-friendly businesses. Plus, I'll have a special announcement about my run at the Oris.
Down to Business.
Brought to you by FBD Insurance.
With me, Bobby Kerr, this Saturday morning from 10.
On News Talk.
Volkswagen Financial Services have launched a new product that will transform your business. Interested? It can remove depreciation costs on your entire fleet, free up cash flow for your business, and with fixed monthly payments, your fleet costs will always be the same. Sounds good, right? It also has a low cost of entry, and if your driver needs assistance, they'll call us, not you. And this product's name? Leasing, from Volkswagen Financial Services. So whether your business requires 1 or 100 vehicles, our leasing product can benefit you. To learn more, visit vwfs.ie/leasing or call into your local authorised Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, Skoda or Volkswagen commercial vehicle retailer today. Terms and conditions apply.
When you're a first-time buyer, it's first things first. So when finding a great low fixed rate is all that matters right now, Ulster Bank's new First 5 mortgage has you sorted. We've 5 great benefits, including the lowest 2-year fixed rate in the market. Just search Ulster Bank First 5. Ulster Bank. Help for what matters. Lowest rate claim source bonkers.ie, 29th of June 2018. Maximum loan to value is 90%. Security and insurance required. Product fees may apply. Over 18s and residential mortgages only. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Credit facility subject to repayment and financial status. Warning, your home is at risk if you do not keep up payments on a mortgage or any other loan secured on it. Warning, if you do not meet the repayments on your loan, your account will go into arrears. This may affect your credit rating, which may limit your ability to access credit in the future. Warning, you may have to pay charges if you pay off a fixed rate loan early. Ulster Bank Ireland DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
TVs have just arrived at appliancesdelivered.ie. Great, says you. What's in it for me? Well, how about a 32-inch Blue Diamond TV for just $199.95 with a built-in soundbar? Or a 39-inch, now $299.95. Save €80. Or if you want to blow the doors off but not the budget, get a 55-inch TV. Was $549.95, now just $449.95. Available for a limited time, along with great deals on Samsung, Akai and Philips TVs. Only at appliancesdelivered.ie.
In Friday's Irish Independent, get match ready with your free Leinster Rugby supplement. There's no better way to get behind your team, your club and your province than with your passion. Read Ross Maloney's player diary on how the only way they can build on last season is by getting even better. In the big interview, Rhys Ruddock explains why he's focusing on keeping standards high over the next few weeks. Plus, Victor Costello and how they're ready to kick on. Only with Friday's Irish Independent. Take a fresh look.
News Talk Breakfast.
You're giving very low marks to the government this morning. Your report card at the start of term is must do much better this term.
Well, must do an awful lot better, because there are two big issues. One is housing. I think that's a no-brainer. The second is climate change and global warming. I know, they're not going to lose